The Rodriguez backyard was alive with the sounds of celebration. Paper lanterns swayed in the warm August breeze, casting dancing shadows across the freshly mowed lawn. The scent of grilled hamburgers mixed with the sweet perfume of Maria Rodriguez's prize-winning roses. Children's laughter echoed off the wooden fence as they chased each other around the inflatable bounce house, their faces painted like butterflies and superheroes. "Mas limonada, por favor," Maria's mother called from the picnic table, fanning herself with a paper plate. It was her 75th birthday, and 3 generations had gathered to celebrate. The sun hung low on the horizon, painting the Dallas sky in shades of orange and pink that promised another scorching day tomorrow. Maria wiped her hands on her apron and smiled, surveying the scene with satisfaction. Her husband Carlos was flipping burgers at the grill, engaged in animated conversation with his brothers. Her 2 older boys were playing cornhole with their cousins. And there, near the fence line, she could see 5-year-old Emma in her favorite pink sundress, her dark curls bouncing as she played with her beloved baby doll. "Emma, me amor, stay where I can see you," Maria called out, her motherly instinct never truly quiet even in moments of joy. Emma looked up, her gap-toothed smile radiant, and waved. "Okay, mama." Maria turned back to the kitchen, balancing a fresh pitcher of lemonade. Her sister-in-law was telling a story about her recent trip to Cancun, and everyone was laughing. The moment felt perfect, safe, normal. It was 7:42 p.m. 60 seconds later, everything changed. Maria's sister Isabella screamed first. The sound cut through the party chatter like a knife through silk, primal, terrified, wrong. Maria spun around so fast the lemonade pitcher flew from her hands, shattering against the concrete patio. Her eyes immediately went to the spot where Emma had been playing. Empty. Just the doll, lying face down in the grass. "Emma," Maria's voice ripped from her throat, a sound she didn't recognize as her own. "Emma, baby, where are you?" The backyard froze. Music still played from the Bluetooth speaker, an obscene cheerfulness against the sudden horror. Then chaos erupted. Carlos dropped the spatula and vaulted over the picnic table. Maria's brothers scattered in different directions, calling Emma's name. The children stopped playing, their painted faces confused and frightened. Maria ran to the fence, her sandals slipping on the grass. "Emma, this isn't funny, baby, come out right now." Her voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. She checked behind the oak tree, behind the tool shed in the bounce house. Nothing. "Check the house," Carlos shouted, his face drained of color. Maybe she went inside. Maria's mother was already running toward the back door, moving faster than she had in years. Maria followed, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. They tore through the house, upstairs, downstairs, closets, bathrooms, under beds. Emma loved hide-and-seek, Maria told herself. She's just hiding. She'll jump out any second, giggling at the game. But Emma didn't jump out. "Call 911, Carlos said quietly to his brother, pulling out his own phone with shaking hands. It was 7:51 p.m. Emma had been gone 9 minutes. 9 minutes that felt like 9 hours. The police arrived with startling speed, 2 patrol cars screaming into the quiet suburban street, lights painting the neighboring houses in flashes of red and blue. Officer James Morrison was first through the gate, his hand instinctively near his service weapon. He'd been on the force for 15 years. He knew what the statistics said about missing children. The first 3 hours were critical. "Ma'am, I need you to tell me exactly when you last saw your daughter," he said to Maria, pulling out a notebook. Maria could barely form words. Her whole body was shaking. She was right there, by the fence. She had her doll. I only looked away for a minute. What was she wearing? Pink sundress with white flowers, white sandals. Her hair was in pigtails with pink ribbons. She's 5 years old, 4 feet tall, brown eyes. She has a small birthmark on her left shoulder shaped like a heart. More sirens, more police. The backyard transformed into a command center. Officers spread out through the neighborhood, knocking on doors, checking garages, peering into storm drains. A K-9 unit arrived, German shepherds straining at their leashes as handlers pressed Emma's pillowcase to their noses. At 9:15 p.m., a black sedan pulled up to the curb. Detective Sarah Chen stepped out, straightening her blazer. She was 43, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a reputation for being relentless. She'd been having dinner with her daughter when the call came, missing 5-year-old possible abduction. She'd kissed her own child's forehead and driven straight over, her stomach already knotted with dread. Chen surveyed the scene with practiced efficiency. Too many people trampling potential evidence. She started directing officers, establishing a perimeter, organizing the chaos. Then she walked the backyard alone, her flashlight beam cutting through the deepening darkness. That's when she saw them, fresh tire tracks in the alley behind the Rodriguez house. Not just any tracks. These were from a vehicle that had stopped, backed up slightly, then accelerated away quickly. The tread pattern was clear in the soft dirt. Chen crouched down, her flashlight illuminating the marks. Her jaw tightened. Someone had been here, waiting, watching. This wasn't a child who wandered off. This was an abduction. Chen stood up, looking back at the house where Maria Rodriguez sat on the porch steps, her face buried in her hands, her body racked with sobs. Carlos stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder, tears streaming down his face. Detective Chen pulled out her phone and made the call she'd been dreading. "This is Chen. I need the FBI's child abduction rapid deployment team, now." The night was just beginning, and somewhere in the darkness, Emma Rodriguez was running out of time. By dawn, the Rodriguez neighborhood had transformed into something resembling a military operation. News vans lined both sides of the street. Satellite dishes pointed skyward like mechanical flowers seeking the sun. Reporters clutched coffee cups and checked their makeup in compact mirrors, preparing for live shots that would broadcast Emma's disappearance across the nation. Maria hadn't slept. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at a cold cup of coffee someone had placed in front of her hours ago. Her eyes were swollen, nearly shut from crying, her voice hoarse from screaming her daughter's name into the darkness. Carlos sat beside her, his hand gripping hers so tightly their knuckles had turned white. Neither had changed clothes from the party. Maria's apron still had lemonade stains. The house had become FBI territory. Special Agent Marcus Williams commanded the living room, which now housed computers, printers, phones, and a digital map of Dallas County marked with color-coded search zones. The Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team had arrived at 2:47 a.m., and they'd been working nonstop ever since. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Agent Williams said gently, crouching in front of her. He was a large man with kind eyes and a wedding ring worn thin from years of wear. "I need you to look at these photos and tell me if you recognize anyone." Maria forced herself to focus on the tablet he held. Face after face of registered sex offenders in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Each one made her stomach turn. Could one of these monsters have her baby? I don't know, I don't think so." Her voice broke. "Please find her, please. She's afraid of the dark. She sleeps with a nightlight. She needs her asthma inhaler, We're doing everything we can," Williams assured her, though his expression remained grave. He'd worked 127 child abduction cases in his career. He knew the statistics. After 24 hours, the chances of finding a child alive dropped to less than 20%. They were already 13 hours in. Outside, Detective Sarah Chen stood in the alley, examining the tire tracks in the harsh light of portable Klieg lights. A forensic team had already made plaster casts of the treads. Chen photographed them from every angle, her mind racing through possibilities. "Detective," Officer Morrison jogged over, slightly out of breath. "We've got something. The Hendersons, 2 houses down, they have a Ring doorbell camera." Chen's pulse quickened. "Did they check the footage?" "They're pulling it up now." Chen followed Morrison to the Henderson residence, where Robert Henderson, a nervous accountant in his 50s, had his laptop open on the dining room table. His wife hovered behind him, her hand over her mouth. "I should have checked this last night," Henderson said, his voice thick with guilt. "I just didn't think. We were at the movies when it happened. We just got home an hour ago and saw all the police." "It's okay, sir. Can you show me what you have?" Henderson's fingers flew over the keyboard, pulling up the Ring app. "This is yesterday evening. The camera is motion activated, so it only records when someone passes by." The screen showed a typical suburban street scene. Timestamp, 7:41 p.m. A jogger passed by, a dog walker. Then at 7:43 p.m. a dark blue sedan entered the frame. Chen leaned closer, her breath catching. The car was moving slowly, too slowly for someone just driving through the neighborhood. It crawled past the Henderson house, past the next house, approaching the Rodriguez property. "Can you zoom in?" Chen asked. Henderson enhanced the image as much as the resolution allowed. The driver's window was down. A man's arm hung out, his hand tapping against the door panel. His face was partially obscured by the angle and the evening shadows, but Chen could make out a strong jaw, dark hair, sunglasses even though the sun was setting. The sedan stopped directly in front of the alley that ran behind the Rodriguez house. Chen's jaw clenched. "How long does it stay there?" "Watch," Henderson said quietly. The car idled for 47 seconds. Then it turned sharply into the alley and disappeared from the camera's view. "I need this footage," Chen said. "All of it, and I need you to send it to this email immediately." Of course," Henderson stammered, already typing. Chen stepped outside and pulled out her phone, dialing the FBI command center. "Williams, I've got him on camera. Dark blue sedan, looks like a late-model Nissan or Honda. I'm sending the footage now. We need to run this through every traffic camera in the city." "On it," Williams responded. "Chen, there's something else. We've had over 3,000 tips called in already. Social media is going crazy with Emma's photo. We've got volunteer search teams forming all over the city." Indeed, as Chen walked back toward the Rodriguez house, she could see the gathering crowd. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, wearing yellow ribbons and carrying printed photos of Emma's face. They stood in organized groups, waiting for search assignments. Local churches had opened their doors, providing coffee and coordination points. The Spanish radio stations were broadcasting non-stop appeals for information. "Find Emma" had become a rallying cry across Dallas. A news helicopter thundered overhead, its spotlight sweeping across the neighborhood. Maria had agreed to a press conference at 10 a.m., hoping that her tearful plea might reach whoever had taken her daughter. Her family was helping her get ready, but Chen had seen the devastation in Maria's eyes. This was every parent's worst nightmare, playing out in real time on national television. Chen's phone buzzed. A text from the forensic team, hair found on fence, consistent with victim's description. Also found partial shoe print in alley dirt, size 11 men's work boot. Piece by piece, the evidence was coming together. But evidence didn't matter if they couldn't find Emma alive. Chen stood in the middle of the street as the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the pavement. Somewhere in this city of 1.3 million people, a little girl in a pink sundress was terrified and alone. Or worse. The detective pulled out her notebook and wrote 3 questions. Who drives a dark blue sedan? Who wears size 11 work boots? Who was watching the Rodriguez house? Somewhere these 3 answers intersected in one person. Chen just had to find him. And she had to find him before it was too late. Her phone rang. The FBI had identified 37 dark blue sedans registered in the greater Dallas area, matching the model in the video. They were already dispatching teams to track down each owner. The hunt had truly begun. But time was not on their side. Every minute that passed was a minute Emma might not have. Chen looked up at the sky, silently making a promise to a little girl she'd never met. I will find you. Whatever it takes. The call came in at 11:47 a.m. on day 4 of Emma's disappearance. Detective Sarah Chen was reviewing traffic camera footage for the 100th time, her eyes burning from lack of sleep, when Officer Morrison burst into the FBI command center. "Detective, we've got something," he said, breathless. "A tip from the landscaping company." Chen looked up sharply. "Which one?" "Greenscape Solutions. The dispatcher says one of their crews worked the Rodriguez neighborhood the day Emma disappeared. She didn't think much of it until she saw the news this morning and recognized the street." Chen was already on her feet, grabbing her jacket. Who was the crew member? Morrison checked his notes. Guy named Marcus Webb, 34 years old. He was doing lawn maintenance on Elmwood Drive that afternoon. "Run his background now." While Morrison worked his computer, Chen felt that familiar tingle at the base of her spine, the one that came when a case was about to break. She'd learned to trust that instinct over her 15 years as a detective. "Jesus Christ," Morrison whispered, his face going pale as the background check loaded. "Detective, you need to see this." Chen leaned over his shoulder, reading the screen. Her blood ran cold. Marcus Webb, convicted in 2009 for attempted child abduction in Fort Worth. A 12-year-old girl had been walking home from school when Webb tried to lure her into his van, claiming her mother had been in an accident. The girl screamed and ran. Webb was caught, convicted, and served only 3 years of a 7-year sentence. Good behavior. 3 years, Chen said, her voice tight with rage. He got 3 years for trying to kidnap a child and they let him out. "There's more," Morrison said, scrolling down. After his release, he was required to register as a sex offender, but he petitioned to have that removed after 5 years. A judge granted it because the original charge was reduced on appeal. Legally, he's clean now. "Legally clean doesn't mean innocent," Chen snapped. "What kind of vehicle does he drive?" Morrison pulled up the DMV records. 2015 Honda Civic, dark blue. The room fell silent, every head turned toward them. "That's our guy," Chen said quietly. "Get me his current address, and get me a search warrant, now." Agent Williams was already on the phone with a judge. The warrant came through in 43 minutes, a record. Chen assembled a tactical team, including 2 FBI agents and 4 Dallas PD officers. They wore body cameras and carried battering rams, though Chen hoped they wouldn't need them. Marcus Webb lived in a rundown apartment complex on the east side of Dallas, the kind of place where people minded their own business and didn't ask questions. The paint was peeling off the buildings, and several windows were covered with cardboard. A chain-link fence surrounded a patchy courtyard where a few children played, oblivious to the storm about to descend. Chen's team parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot. It was 2:15 p.m., and the Texas sun beat down mercilessly. Chen could feel sweat trickling down her back beneath her bulletproof vest. "Apartment 2C, second floor, corner unit." Chen knocked firmly. "Marcus Webb, Dallas Police. We have a warrant to search the premises." "Silence." She knocked again, harder. Mr. Webb opened the door. There was movement inside, footsteps, the sound of something falling. Then the door cracked open, held by a security chain. The man who peered out looked ordinary in the most unsettling way. Average height, average build, unremarkable features. He had dark hair, slightly receding, and wore a sweat-stained white t-shirt and gym shorts. His eyes were what got Chen. They darted nervously, never quite meeting hers. "What's this about?" Webb's voice was higher than she expected, with a slight tremor. "We need to ask you some questions about your whereabouts on the evening of August 17th, Chen said evenly. "You can let us in, or we can remove the door. Your choice." Webb licked his lips, his hand trembled on the doorknob. I don't understand. What's this about? A 5-year-old girl named Emma Rodriguez went missing from Elmwood Drive. You were working in that neighborhood that day. Something flickered across Webb's face, recognition, fear, guilt. It was gone before Chen could identify it. I work lots of neighborhoods, Webb said. I don't remember anything unusual. Open the door, Mr. Webb. For a long moment, Webb stood frozen. Then slowly he undid the chain. The apartment was sparse and obsessively neat. A small TV sat on a milk crate. A futon served as both couch and bed. The kitchen was barely bigger than a closet, but what made Chen's skin crawl was the walls, completely bare except for a calendar from Webb's landscaping company. No photos, no decorations, no personality, like someone who was ready to disappear at a moment's notice. Where were you on the evening of August 17th between 7 and 9 p.m.? Chen asked, watching Webb's face carefully. I was here home, watching TV. Can anyone verify that? I live alone. What were you watching? Webb's eyes darted to the TV, then back. I don't remember, some movie, a comedy maybe. Chen nodded to her team. They began searching the apartment systematically. Morrison took the bedroom, 2 officers took the bathroom and kitchen, and Chen headed for the door that led to Webb's designated parking space and storage area. You can't just, Webb started, but Agent Williams cut him off. We have a warrant, Mr. Webb. I suggest you sit down and cooperate. The garage was cluttered with landscaping equipment, lawnmowers, hedge trimmers, bags of fertilizer, coils of garden hose. Webb's blue Honda Civic sat in the center, its paint dulled by Texas sun and dust. Chen walked around the vehicle slowly, her flashlight beam probing every shadow. The trunk was locked. Mr. Webb, I need your car keys. From inside the apartment, she heard Webb's voice rise in pitch. I have rights. You can't. Keys now. Morrison brought them out, dropping them into Chen's gloved hand. Her heart pounded as she inserted the key into the trunk lock. The mechanism clicked. She lifted the lid. The trunk was mostly empty. A spare tire, a jack, jumper cables, nothing unusual. Then Chen spotted it. Partially hidden beneath the gray carpet lining, wedged near the wheel well, was a small piece of pink fabric. She carefully pulled it free. A ribbon, satin slightly worn with tiny white flowers printed on it. Chen's hands began to shake. She walked back into the apartment, holding the evidence bag up to the light. Mr. Webb, she said, her voice deadly calm. Can you explain why there's a child's pink ribbon in your trunk? A ribbon that matches the description of what Emma Rodriguez was wearing the night she disappeared. Webb's face went white, then gray. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. I found that in the street. I was going to throw it away. You found a child's ribbon in the street and kept it in your trunk. I forgot it was there. Chen stepped closer. Emma Rodriguez went missing from a house where you were working. She was wearing pink ribbons in her hair. You drive a blue Honda Civic matching the description of a vehicle seen in the area at the time she vanished. You have a prior conviction for attempted child abduction, and now we find her ribbon in your trunk. I want a lawyer, Webb said suddenly, his voice cracking. You're going to need one, Chen replied. Marcus Webb, you're under arrest for suspicion of kidnapping and child endangerment. You have the right to remain silent. As Morrison snapped handcuffs on Webb's wrists, the man began to cry, not tears of remorse but of self-pity. This is a mistake, he kept saying. This is all a mistake. Chen watched them lead him away, the pink ribbon secure in her evidence bag. They had their suspect. They had physical evidence connecting him to Emma. But they still didn't have Emma. And as Webb was pushed into the back of a police cruiser, he never once asked what had happened to the little girl, never expressed concern for her well-being, never claimed innocence with the indignation of the wrongly accused. He just cried for himself. Chen pulled out her phone and called Maria Rodriguez. This was going to be the hardest call she'd ever made, telling a mother they'd found evidence her daughter had been in a predator's car, but still had no idea where she was now. The monster had been hiding in plain sight, cutting grass and trimming hedges, while a community searched desperately for the child he'd taken. Now he was in custody. But the clock was still ticking, and Emma was still missing. The Dallas County Courthouse buzzed with energy on the morning of Marcus Webb's preliminary hearing. News crews filled the steps outside, their cameras trained on every entrance. Protesters held signs demanding justice for Emma. "Find our angel," read one banner stretched between two women wearing pink ribbons pinned to their shirts. Inside courtroom 4B, District Attorney Patricia Hammond sat at the prosecution table, her jaw set in determination. She was 52, with silver-streaked hair and a reputation for never backing down from difficult cases. She'd convicted murderers, rapists, and gang leaders, but this case was different. This case was falling apart in her hands. Marcus Webb entered in an orange jumpsuit, shackled at the wrists and ankles. His public defender, Richard Brennan, walked beside him with the confidence of a man who knew he held the winning cards. Brennan was a shark in a cheap suit, a veteran defense attorney who'd built his career on finding reasonable doubt in the prosecution's certainty. The gallery was packed. Maria Rodriguez sat in the front row, flanked by her husband Carlos and her mother. Maria had lost 15 pounds in the 2 weeks since Emma vanished. Her clothes hung loose on her frame, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She stared at Webb's back with an intensity that could have burned through steel. "All rise," the bailiff called, the Honorable Judge Robert Chen presiding. Judge Chen, no relation to Detective Sarah Chen, was known for his strict adherence to the law and his intolerance for theatrical tactics. He took his seat, reviewed the case file briefly, and looked up. "We're here for the preliminary hearing in the state of Texas versus Marcus Webb. Ms. Hammond, proceed." D.A. Hammond stood, smoothing her blazer. "Your Honor, the state will demonstrate that there is sufficient probable cause to bind the defendant over for trial on charges of kidnapping and murder." "Murder?" Brennan was on his feet immediately. "Your Honor, there's no body, there's no proof of death. This is a gross overreach." "Mr. Brennan, you'll have your chance," Judge Chen interrupted. "Ms. Hammond, present your evidence." For the next hour, Hammond laid out the prosecution's case. She called Detective Sarah Chen to the stand, who testified about the Ring doorbell footage showing Webb's blue Honda Civic in the neighborhood at the time of Emma's disappearance. She presented the pink ribbon found in Webb's trunk, which forensic analysis confirmed was consistent with the ribbons Maria had purchased for Emma's hair. Hammond introduced Webb's prior conviction for attempted child abduction, noting the disturbing pattern of behavior. She presented cell phone tower data showing Webb's phone in the Rodriguez neighborhood during the critical time window. "And finally, Your Honor," Hammond said, her voice rising with conviction, "the defendant gave inconsistent statements to police. First, he claimed he left the neighborhood at 5 p.m. When confronted with evidence placing him there later, he changed his story to 6 p.m., then 7 p.m. His alibi fell apart under the slightest scrutiny." Maria clutched a tissue to her mouth, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Carlos wrapped his arm around her, his own eyes glistening. Judge Chen made notes, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Brennan, your response." Richard Brennan stood slowly, adjusting his tie. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost sympathetic. "Your Honor, my heart breaks for the Rodriguez family, truly, but we cannot convict a man on sympathy and circumstantial evidence alone." He began to pace, his hands gesturing expressively. "Let's examine what the prosecution actually has. A ribbon, a mass-produced ribbon that could have come from any store in Texas. My client works in landscaping. He works in dozens of neighborhoods. Is it really so shocking that a ribbon might have blown into his vehicle?" Hammond started to object, but Brennan continued. The doorbell footage, it shows a blue car. There are thousands of blue Honda Civics in Dallas. The video quality doesn't even clearly show the license plate or the driver's face. The cell phone data places him in the area, Hammond interjected. In the area where he was legally working, Brennan shot back. Yes, my client has a past conviction. He served his time. He was rehabilitated. The registry requirement was removed by a judge. Are we now saying that anyone with a criminal history is automatically guilty of every crime that occurs nearby? Judge Chen leaned forward. What about the inconsistent statements? My client was nervous, Your Honor. Police showed up at his door, armed and aggressive, asking about a missing child. He was frightened and confused about his timeline. That's not proof of guilt. That's proof he's human. Brennan walked closer to the bench, his voice dropping to a more intimate register. Your Honor, where is the witness? Where is the evidence of a crime? Where is Emma Rodriguez? The courtroom fell silent. Maria let out a soft, anguished sound. The prosecution wants to charge my client with murder, but they can't produce a body. They can't produce a single eyewitness who saw Mr. Webb with Emma Rodriguez. They can't produce forensic evidence. No DNA, no fingerprints, no concrete proof of any kind. Brennan paused for effect. This is a tragedy, Your Honor, but it's not a case. It's a desperate attempt to give a grieving family someone to blame. The state is asking you to bind my client over for trial based on nothing more than suspicion and coincidence. Judge Chen reviewed his notes in silence. The courtroom held its collective breath. Ms. Hammond, the judge finally said, your evidence is indeed circumstantial. Do you have anything else to present? Hammond hesitated. This was the moment she'd been dreading. Your Honor, we believe that with more time, additional evidence will emerge. The investigation is ongoing. That's not an answer to my question, Judge Chen said sharply. No, Your Honor. At this time, this is the evidence we have. The judge sat back in his chair, his expression troubled. Here's my dilemma. I have a man with a prior conviction for a similar crime. I have him in the area at the right time. I have physical evidence, albeit circumstantial, linking him to the victim. But Mr. Brennan is correct that this case has significant evidentiary problems. Maria's hands gripped the railing in front of her. Please, she whispered, please don't let him go. Judge Chen looked at her, genuine sympathy in his eyes. Then he turned back to the attorneys. I'm going to bind Mr. Webb over for trial on the kidnapping charge. However, I'm reducing bail to $250,000 given the circumstantial nature of the evidence. Your Honor, Hammond protested. No, Maria screamed. No, he'll run, he'll disappear, please. Brennan was already smiling. We can post that bond, Your Honor. Carlos had to physically hold Maria back as she lunged toward the defense table, her screams echoing off the courtroom walls. He took my baby. He took my baby. Bailiffs moved quickly to restore order as Judge Chen banged his gavel. This hearing is adjourned. Mr. Webb will remain in custody until bond is posted. As they led Webb away, he glanced back at Maria for just a moment. His expression was blank, emotionless. Then he was gone. Outside the courtroom, Detective Chen found Hammond leaning against the wall, her head in her hands. We're losing this case, Hammond said quietly. If we go to trial now, we'll lose. Brennan will tear us apart. So what do? Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. We find Emma, or we find a witness. Because without one or the other, Marcus Webb is going to walk free. That night, Chen sat in her office long after everyone else had gone home. She spread every witness statement across her desk, reading them again with burning, exhausted eyes. There had to be something, some detail they'd missed, some thread they hadn't pulled. That's when she saw it. A name buried in the witness list from the initial canvassing, Sofia Martinez, age 3. Relation to victim, cousin. Interview status, deemed too young for formal interview. Chen stared at the notation. A 3-year-old, present at the party. What if they'd been wrong? Detective Sarah Chen knocked on the door of the Martinez home at 9:30 a.m. on a Thursday morning, 3 months after Emma Rodriguez had vanished. 3 months of dead ends, false leads, and crushing disappointment. Marcus Webb had posted bond and was living in a motel on the outskirts of Dallas, wearing an ankle monitor and waiting for a trial that might never convict him. The door opened to reveal Isabella Martinez, Maria Rodriguez's younger sister. Her eyes were red-rimmed and wary. The entire family had been living in a nightmare, and Chen knew her unexpected visit wouldn't be welcome. "Detective Chen," Isabella said, her voice flat, "has something happened?" "Mrs. Martinez, I need to ask you about your daughter, Sophia." Isabella's hand tightened on the doorframe. "Sophia, she's only 3 years old. What could she possibly?" "She was at the party that day," Chen interrupted gently. "I know we didn't interview her at the time. She was too young. But I've been doing some research and I think we made a mistake." Isabella shook her head. "Sophia barely remembers that day. She's just a baby." "May I come in? I'd like to explain." Reluctantly, Isabella stepped aside. The Martinez home was modest but warm, filled with family photos and children's artwork stuck to the refrigerator with magnets. Through the living room window, Chen could see a small backyard where Sophia was playing with dolls in a sandbox, her dark curls bouncing as she created some elaborate imaginary scenario. "I attended a seminar 2 weeks ago," Chen began, settling onto the couch. "It was about forensic interviewing techniques for very young children. Mrs. Martinez, research shows that children as young as 3 can provide reliable testimony if they're interviewed properly. They remember details adults miss. They notice things we overlook." "But Sophia hasn't said anything about that night," Isabella protested. "If she'd seen something, wouldn't she have told us?" "Not necessarily. Young children don't always know what's important. They process traumatic events differently than adults. Sometimes they need the right questions, the right environment to unlock those memories." Isabella looked out at her daughter, conflict written across her face. "I don't want to traumatize her. She's already had nightmares about Emma being gone." "I understand," Chen said softly. "That's why I want to bring in a specialist. Dr. Lisa Park is one of the leading experts in child forensic psychology. She's worked with children even younger than Sophia. The interview would be gentle, play-based, non-threatening. Sophia wouldn't even realize she was being interviewed. And if she doesn't remember anything, then we're no worse off than we are now. But if there's even a chance she saw something." Chen leaned forward, her voice urgent. "Mrs. Martinez, Marcus Webb is going to walk free unless we find new evidence. Your niece is missing. Don't you think we owe it to Emma to try everything?" Isabella was silent for a long moment, tears sliding down her cheeks. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but I'm there the entire time, and if Sophia gets upset, we stop immediately." "Of course," Chen agreed. 3 days later, they gathered in a specially designed interview room at the Dallas Children's Advocacy Center. The space looked nothing like a police station. It was painted in soft pastels, filled with toys, stuffed animals, and children's books. A camera hidden in the ceiling would record everything, but to Sophia, it would just look like a fun playroom. Dr. Lisa Park was a petite woman in her 40s with a gentle voice and endless patience. She'd spent 20 years helping children navigate the trauma of abuse, neglect, and violence. She greeted Sophia warmly, showing her the toy kitchen set and the basket of dolls. "Hi, Sophia, I'm Dr. Lisa. Do you like to play?" Sophia, shy at first, nodded and clutched her mother's hand. "You can play with anything you want," Dr. Park said. "Your mommy will be right here the whole time. Is that okay?" Another nod. For the first 20 minutes, Dr. Park simply played with Sophia, building rapport. They made pretend cupcakes in the toy kitchen. They gave names to the stuffed animals. They colored pictures together. Slowly, Sophia relaxed, her natural 3-year-old enthusiasm bubbling to the surface. In the observation room next door, Detective Chen watched the monitors, her palms sweating. Agent Williams stood beside her, equally tense. This was their last shot. "Sophia," Dr. Park said casually as they stacked blocks together, "do you remember your cousin Emma?" Sophia's hand stilled. She looked down at the blocks. "Emma's lost." "That's right, Emma is lost. Do you remember the party at Grandma's house? The one with the birthday cake?" "Grandma's birthday," Sophia confirmed, picking up a blue block. "That was a fun party, wasn't it? There were lots of people there." Sophia nodded, stacking blocks into a tower. "Do you remember playing outside?" There was a bouncy house." "That sounds fun," Dr. Park smiled. "Did you see Emma playing?" Sophia's tower toppled. She looked frustrated and started rebuilding it. For several minutes she didn't answer, and Chen felt her hope beginning to fade. Then Dr. Park tried a different approach. She pulled out a photo of Emma, the same smiling picture that had been plastered across every news outlet in Texas. "This is Emma," Dr. Park said gently. "Do you remember seeing her at the party?" Sophia looked at the photo. Something shifted in her expression, a shadow crossing her small face. She put down the blocks and picked up a toy car from the basket, rolling it back and forth on the carpet. "Blue car," she said quietly. Chen's breath caught. In the observation room, Williams grabbed her arm. "What did you say, sweetie?" Dr. Park kept her voice neutral, careful not to lead. "Blue car," Sophia repeated, rolling the toy faster. "Emma went in the blue car." Dr. Park's training kept her expression calm, but Chen could see her hand trembling slightly as she reached for another toy. "Can you tell me about the blue car?" Sophia picked up a toy figure, a man in green pants. She put him in the toy car. "The grass man." "The grass man," Dr. Park echoed gently. "He had a green shirt like this." Sophia pointed to her own shirt, which was pink, then shook her head. "No, green like grass." Webb's landscaping uniform was green. Chen felt electricity run through her veins. "Did you see Emma with the grass man?" Dr. Park asked. Sophia nodded, making the toy car drive across the carpet. "Emma walked to the blue car. The grass man was there. Then Mommy called me." Isabella gasped audibly. Her hand flew to her mouth. "I did call her," Isabella whispered to the camera, knowing Chen was watching. "I went outside to get her from the driveway. She was wandering toward the alley. I didn't think. Oh God, I didn't think anything of it. I saw Marcus Webb's truck parked there. He'd been working on the lawns. I just thought. I didn't realize." In the interview room, Dr. Park continued carefully. "Where did the blue car go?" Sophia made the toy car drive away, making soft vroom sounds. "Away." Emma went away in the blue car. "Did Emma look happy or sad?" Sophia thought about this. She was talking to the grass man. Then the car went away. Dr. Park glanced at the camera, giving the slightest nod. She had what they needed. For the next 10 minutes she asked follow-up questions in various ways, being careful not to lead or suggest. Sophia's story remained consistent. Blue car, grass man in green shirt, Emma getting in, the car driving away down the alley. When the interview concluded, Sophia went back to playing with blocks, completely unaware that her 2 words, "blue car," had just changed everything. Chen burst into the interview room, her face flushed with excitement. "Mrs. Martinez, thank you so much." Isabella was crying, holding Sophia close. "I saw him there. I saw his truck. I called Sophia away from the alley and I saw Marcus Webb's truck parked there. I didn't piece it together. Why didn't I piece it together?" "You had no reason to suspect anything," Chen said. "But now we have an eyewitness. We have Sophia." The legal battle that was about to unfold would make headlines across the nation. A 3-year-old's testimony. Could it hold up in court? Would a jury believe the words of a child barely out of diapers? But Detective Chen didn't care about the challenges ahead. For the first time in 3 months, they had hope. Emma Rodriguez had been seen getting into Marcus Webb's blue car. The monster had been identified by the smallest, most innocent voice. Now they just had to make it stick. The news exploded across every media outlet within hours. 3-year-old witness identifies suspect in Emma Rodriguez case, screamed the headlines. Richard Brennan's face appeared on the courthouse steps, his expression a mixture of outrage and theatrical disbelief. The prosecution is basing their entire case on the testimony of a toddler, he said into a forest of microphones. A 3-year-old child who still believes in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. This is desperate, reckless, and frankly, an insult to the justice system. Inside the district attorney's office, Patricia Hammond faced a room full of skeptical colleagues. The video of Sophia's interview played on the conference room screen. Some faces showed hope, others showed concern. "She's 3 years old, Pat," her senior prosecutor said, shaking his head. "Brennan is going to eviscerate this in court. He'll bring in experts who'll say she's suggestible, that Dr. Park led her, that a child that age can't distinguish reality from imagination." "Then we bring in our own experts," Hammond shot back. Dr. Park's interview was textbook perfect, no leading questions. The child's statement was spontaneous and consistent, and it matches the physical evidence we already have. "A ribbon and a blue car," another prosecutor scoffed. "That's still circumstantial." "It's an eyewitness account," Hammond insisted. "Sophia Martinez saw Emma Rodriguez get into Marcus Webb's vehicle. That's direct evidence." From a 3-year-old. "Age doesn't negate truth," Detective Chen interjected from the back of the room. "I've watched that interview 20 times. That little girl isn't making this up. She's describing exactly what she saw." Hammond turned to her team. "I'm filing a motion to allow Sophia's testimony. We're going to fight for this." The pretrial hearing became a media circus. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity, with people lining the hallways hopping to get inside. Maria Rodriguez arrived early, her hand gripping a worn photograph of Emma. She'd aged years in the 3 months since her daughter disappeared. Her hair had started graying at the temples, and her clothes hung on her diminished frame. Marcus Webb entered in a suit his attorney had provided, trying to look like a respectable citizen rather than a monster. He kept his eyes down, playing the role of the wrongly accused. Judge Chen called the court to order. "We're here to determine the admissibility of testimony from Sophia Martinez, age 3, in the case against Marcus Webb. Ms. Hammond." Hammond stood, her spine straight with determination. "Your Honor, the state calls Dr. Lisa Park." Dr. Park took the stand with quiet confidence. Hammond walked her through her credentials: Ph.D. in developmental psychology, 20 years of experience, author of 3 books on child witness testimony, expert consultant for the FBI. "Dr. Park, can a 3-year-old child provide reliable testimony?" "Yes," Dr. Park answered clearly. "Research consistently shows that children as young as 3 can accurately recall and report events they've witnessed, especially significant or emotional events." "What makes their testimony reliable?" "Children at this age lack the sophisticated cognitive ability to fabricate complex scenarios. They report what they see in simple, concrete terms. They don't have the social filters adults develop. When properly interviewed, without leading questions or suggestions, young children can be remarkably accurate witnesses." Hammond played portions of Sophia's interview. The jury watched as the little girl naturally, without prompting, mentioned the blue car and the grass man. "In your professional opinion, was Sophia Martinez's statement credible?" "Absolutely. Her description was spontaneous. She initiated the topic when shown Emma's photo. Her details were specific: the blue car, the green shirt, the sequence of events. This is consistent with genuine memory recall, not fabrication or suggestion." Brennan's cross-examination was aggressive. He paced in front of Dr. Park like a predator circling prey. Dr. Park, children believe in imaginary friends, correct? Some do, yes. They confuse dreams with reality. Sometimes, but they're highly suggestible, easily influenced by adult questioning. When interviewed improperly, yes, but so a child who's been exposed to weeks of family trauma, media coverage, and adult anxiety about a missing cousin might incorporate those elements into her memories. Brennan used air quotes mockingly. Dr. Park remained calm. Mr. Brennan, Sophia Martinez was interviewed using established protocols specifically designed to prevent suggestion. She wasn't asked, "Did Emma get in a blue car?" She spontaneously said blue car when shown Emma's photo. That's the key difference. Or, Brennan countered, she'd heard adults talking about blue cars for weeks and simply repeated what she'd heard. The interview was conducted 3 months after the incident, and the family didn't know about the blue car detail from the ring footage. That information wasn't publicly released. Brennan's confident smile faltered slightly. He recovered quickly. "Your Honor, a 3-year-old's testimony is inherently unreliable. The defense moves to exclude this evidence." The courtroom held its breath as Judge Chen reviewed his notes. Finally, he spoke. "I've reviewed the interview video extensively. Dr. Park's methodology was sound. The child's statement was spontaneous and detailed. While I understand the defense's concerns about age and reliability, that goes to the weight of the evidence, not its admissibility. The motion to exclude is denied. Sophia Martinez's testimony will be allowed, and the jury will determine its credibility." Maria Rodriguez sobbed with relief. Brennan's jaw clenched in fury. But Hammond wasn't finished. "Your Honor, there's additional evidence. Based on Sophia's testimony establishing a timeline, we've obtained Marcus Webb's complete cell phone records for that evening." She presented new findings to the court. Webb's phone had pinged off towers, creating a trail from the Rodriguez neighborhood at 7:43 p.m., traveling east on Highway 20, then onto rural roads outside the city limits. The final ping before his phone went dead was from a tower near Lake Bridgeport, 30 miles from Dallas at 9:17 p.m. "This remote area," Hammond explained, "matches the time frame when Webb claimed to be home watching television. He lied about his whereabouts." Agent Williams had already dispatched search teams to the area. Hundreds of volunteers combed through the desolate terrain, abandoned farmland, dried creek beds, and overgrown trails where someone might hide a body. On the second day of searching, a cadaver dog named Rex began barking frantically near an old mesquite grove. His handler called for backup. Forensic teams converged on the location. Detective Chen was there when they uncovered the shallow grave. Emma Rodriguez lay wrapped in a blue tarp, her small body curled in the fetal position. She still wore the pink sundress. One pink ribbon remained tied in her hair. The other, the one found in Webb's trunk, had been her match. Chen had seen death many times in her career, but nothing prepared her for this moment. This tiny girl who should have been starting kindergarten, learning to read, losing her first tooth. Instead, she lay in a forgotten patch of Texas earth, stolen from life by a monster who'd smiled at neighbors while hiding his evil. The medical examiner confirmed Emma had died within hours of her abduction. Cause of death: asphyxiation. She'd fought. Defensive wounds on her small hands told the story of a brave little girl who'd struggled to survive. When Chen called Maria Rodriguez with the news, the mother's wails could be heard throughout the police station. They'd found Emma, but they'd found her too late. The discovery changed everything. Now they had a body. Now they had a complete case. Marcus Webb's trial was inevitable. And Sophia Martinez's 2 words, blue car, had set everything in motion. The trial of Marcus Webb began on a cold January morning, 4 months after Emma Rodriguez's body had been found. The courthouse was surrounded by barricades, police officers managing the crowd of protesters, supporters, and media that had transformed the streets into chaos. Inside courtroom 4B, every seat was filled. This wasn't just a trial, it was a reckoning. Maria Rodriguez sat in the front row, wearing black. She'd buried her daughter 6 weeks earlier in a cemetery plot she'd never imagined purchasing. The funeral had drawn thousands, strangers who'd never met Emma but had followed her story, searching for her, praying for her, mourning her. Now Maria came to court every single day, her eyes fixed on Marcus Webb's back, willing him to feel the weight of what he'd destroyed. District Attorney Patricia Hammond had spent months preparing for this moment. She knew the case would hinge on two critical elements: Sofia Martinez's testimony and the forensic evidence linking Webb to Emma's death. The defense would attack both relentlessly. "The state calls Isabella Martinez," Hammond announced on day 3 of testimony. Isabella took the stand, her hands trembling. She'd been dreading this moment, having to relive the night she'd unknowingly witnessed her niece's abduction. "Mrs. Martinez, can you tell the jury what you saw on the evening of August 17th? Isabella's voice was barely above a whisper. "I went outside to get my daughter, Sophia. She'd wandered toward the driveway near the alley. When I got there, I saw Marcus Webb's landscaping truck parked in the alley." "Did you see Mr. Webb?" "Not clearly. I saw someone near a blue car, but I was focused on getting Sophia back inside. I called her name, and she came running to me." "What was Sophia doing when you called her?" Isabella's eyes filled with tears. She was standing at the edge of the driveway, watching something, looking toward the alley. "And you saw Mr. Webb's truck there?" "Yes, I recognized the Greenscape Solutions logo on the side. He'd been working on lawns in our neighborhood all week. I didn't think anything of it. Her voice broke. "I just got Sophia and went back inside." Hammond presented photos of Webb's truck, matching the description Isabella had given. "Mrs. Martinez, when did you realize the significance of what you'd seen?" "When Detective Chen interviewed Sophia, when my baby said blue car and grass man. That's when I understood. I'd seen him there. I'd seen Emma's killer and I didn't know it." Richard Brennan's cross-examination was swift and brutal. "Mrs. Martinez, you said you didn't clearly see anyone near the blue car, correct?" "I saw someone, but you can't definitively say it was Marcus Webb." "No, but—" "And you didn't see Emma Rodriguez at all that evening in the alley?" "No, I was focused on Sophia." "So your testimony is merely that you saw a truck with a company logo and someone near a blue car. You can't actually confirm any interaction with Emma Rodriguez, can you?" "No," Isabella admitted, tears streaming down her face. Brennan nodded, satisfied. No further questions. The prosecution's forensic experts took days to present their evidence. Dr. Michael Chen, the medical examiner, described Emma's injuries in clinical detail that made Maria double over in her seat, sobbing into her hands. "The victim died of asphyxiation," Dr. Chen testified. "Based on petechial hemorrhaging in the eyes and bruising patterns on the neck, she was manually strangled." "How long would death have taken?" Hammond asked gently. "Approximately 3 to 5 minutes of sustained pressure." The courtroom was silent except for Maria's anguished cries. Carlos held her, his own face wet with tears. Marcus Webb sat motionless, staring straight ahead. Forensic evidence linked fibers from Emma's dress to Webb's car trunk. Soil samples from the burial site matched dirt found in the treads of Webb's work boots. The pink ribbon found in his trunk was microscopically identical to the one still in Emma's hair when they found her body. "The evidence is overwhelming," Hammond argued. "Marcus Webb abducted Emma Rodriguez, murdered her, and buried her body in a remote location. The physical evidence is irrefutable." But Brennan had his own experts. A forensic pathologist testified that the time of death couldn't be precisely determined. A fiber expert suggested the dress fibers could have transferred innocently. A soil expert noted that the dirt type was common throughout the region. Coincidences aren't evidence, Brennan argued. My client worked in landscaping. Of course there's soil on his boots. Of course fibers might transfer. None of this proves murder. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, Sofia Martinez's testimony. The courtroom had been specially arranged for a child witness. Sofia, now 3.5 years old, would testify via closed-circuit television from a separate room with only Dr. Lisa Park, a prosecutor, and her mother present. A large screen was positioned so the jury could see her clearly. Sofia appeared on screen wearing a pink dress, her hair in pigtails tied with yellow ribbons. Her mother couldn't bear to use pink ones anymore. She looked tiny and vulnerable, clutching a stuffed elephant. The prosecutor spoke gently. "Hi, Sofia, can you tell us your name?" Sofia Marie Martinez. Her voice was small but clear. "Sofia, do you remember your cousin Emma?" The little girl nodded solemnly. "Emma's in heaven now." "That's right. Do you remember the party at Grandma's house?" There was cake." "Do you remember seeing Emma that day?" Sofia's expression grew serious. She hugged her elephant tighter. "Emma went away." "Can you tell us what you saw?" "I saw Emma go to the blue car. The grass man was there." "What did the grass man look like?" Sofia thought carefully. "He had a green shirt, like when you cut grass." "Did you see Emma get in the blue car?" "Yes, she was talking to the grass man. Then the car went away." The jury watched, transfixed. Some wiped tears from their eyes. This tiny child testifying about the last moment she'd seen her cousin alive. Brennan had the opportunity to cross-examine via the closed-circuit system, but he'd been warned by Judge Chen to tread carefully. Any aggressive questioning of a 3-year-old would turn the jury against him. "Sofia, do you like to play pretend?" Brennan asked, his tone artificially gentle. "Sometimes." "Do you ever get confused between things that really happened and things you imagined?" Dr. Park intervened. "Objection, Your Honor. That question is developmentally inappropriate and potentially confusing to the witness." "Sustained," Judge Chen ruled. "Mr. Brennan, keep your questions age-appropriate." Brennan tried several more approaches, but Sofia's answers remained consistent. Blue car, grass man, green shirt, Emma going away. Finally, Brennan gave up. No further questions. When Sofia's testimony concluded, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. The little girl had no idea the weight her words carried. She'd simply told the truth about what she'd seen. The prosecution rested. Brennan's defense was predictable. Webb had been in the area for work, the evidence was circumstantial, and a 3-year-old's memory was unreliable. He called character witnesses who described Webb as quiet, hardworking, and polite. He emphasized Webb's prior conviction was a decade old and he'd been rehabilitated. But he couldn't explain the cell phone data. He couldn't explain the ribbon. He couldn't explain why Webb had lied about his whereabouts. And he couldn't erase the image of Sofia Martinez, small and innocent, describing exactly what she'd witnessed. In her closing argument, Patricia Hammond stood before the jury with quiet intensity. Marcus Webb stole Emma Rodriguez from her family. He strangled a 5-year-old child and buried her like garbage. The evidence is overwhelming. The testimony is clear. And the voice of the smallest witness, 3-year-old Sofia Martinez, spoke a truth that cannot be denied. She pointed at Webb. "That man is a monster, and it's time for justice." Jury deliberated for 11 hours. Maria Rodriguez couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think beyond the 12 people in that sealed room who held her daughter's justice in their hands. She paced the courthouse hallways, rosary beads clicking through her fingers, whispering prayers in Spanish that her mother had taught her as a child. Detective Sarah Chen sat on a bench outside the courtroom, reviewing the case file one last time even though there was nothing left to do. Every piece of evidence had been presented. Every witness had testified. Now it was out of their hands. At 4:47 p.m. on the third day of deliberations, the call came. The jury had reached a verdict. The courtroom filled within minutes. Media crews scrambled for position. Protesters gathered outside, holding signs with Emma's smiling face. Maria took her seat, Carlos gripping her hand so tightly his knuckles turned white. She couldn't breathe. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Marcus Webb entered, his expression carefully neutral, but Chen noticed the slight tremor in his hands. He knew what was coming. "All rise," the bailiff commanded. Judge Chen entered and took his seat. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I understand you've reached a verdict." The jury foreman, a middle-aged woman who'd cried openly during Sophia's testimony, stood. "We have, Your Honor." "What say you?" In the case of the state of Texas versus Marcus Webb, on the charge of kidnapping in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. Maria gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. On the charge of murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted. Maria collapsed into Carlos's arms, her sobs echoing off the walls. Reporters rushed from the room to break the news. Protesters outside began cheering, their voices carrying through the courthouse windows. Marcus Webb's face crumbled. For the first time since his arrest, genuine emotion showed, not remorse for what he'd done, but despair at being caught. He dropped his head into his hands as bailiffs moved to secure him. Judge Chen banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order, order in this court." When silence finally returned, the judge's expression was granite. "Mr. Webb, you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers. Sentencing will be held 2 weeks from today. Until then, you will be remanded to custody without bail. This court is adjourned." As they led Webb away, he turned for one last look at the gallery. Maria stood, her eyes locked on his. She wanted him to see her face, to see the mother whose child he'd destroyed. Webb quickly looked away, unable to meet her gaze. The sentencing hearing was swift and merciless. Judge Chen had reviewed the pre-sentence reports, the victim impact statements, and the aggravating factors. He'd also received over 10,000 letters from the public demanding the maximum penalty. Maria Rodriguez took the stand to deliver her victim impact statement. She'd lost 23 pounds since Emma's disappearance. Her hair was now more gray than black. She looked a decade older than her 34 years. "You took my baby," Maria said, her voice steady despite the tears. "You took her smile, her laugh, her future. You took her first day of school, her first lost tooth, her wedding day, the children she would have had. You took everything." She stared directly at Webb. "I will never forgive you. I will spend every day for the rest of my life missing her, and I hope you spend every day for the rest of your life remembering what you did." Carlos spoke next, describing Emma's love of butterflies, her dream of becoming a veterinarian, the way she sang off-key but with absolute confidence. "She was our light," he said simply, "and you extinguished it." Judge Chen removed his glasses and addressed Marcus Webb directly. "Mr. Webb, you are a predator who targeted an innocent child. You showed no mercy, no remorse, no humanity. This court will show you none in return. For the crime of first-degree murder, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the crime of first-degree kidnapping, I sentence you to an additional 50 years to run consecutively. You will never draw a free breath again. You will die in prison." Webb was led away, his orange jumpsuit disappearing through the door. He never apologized. He never showed remorse. He simply ceased to exist in the world of free men. Outside the courthouse, District Attorney Patricia Hammond held a press conference. "This verdict represents justice for Emma Rodriguez and for every child threatened by predators. But I want to recognize someone special today." She gestured to Isabella Martinez, who stood holding Sophia's hand. The little girl was now 4 years old, wearing a yellow dress and light-up sneakers, completely unaware of the cameras focused on her. Sophia Martinez is a hero, Hammond said. Her testimony, 2 simple words, blue car, broke this case wide open. She gave us the truth when no one else could. This conviction belongs to her as much as anyone. The crowd applauded. Sophia looked up at her mother, confused by the attention. Isabella knelt down and hugged her daughter tightly, knowing the weight this child would carry someday when she was old enough to understand. The case sparked a nationwide conversation about child witnesses in criminal proceedings. Texas passed Emma's Law 6 months later, establishing standardized protocols for interviewing child witnesses and providing training for law enforcement and prosecutors. 12 other states adopted similar legislation within a year. Dr. Lisa Park became a consultant for the FBI, training agents across the country in child forensic interview techniques. Children see the world differently than adults, she told a conference of law enforcement officials. Sometimes their voices are the clearest because they haven't learned to doubt what they know to be true. Detective Sarah Chen received the Medal of Valor from the Dallas Police Department. She kept a photo on her desk, Emma Rodriguez smiling in her pink sundress, taken just hours before she was taken. Chen had worked 347 cases in her career, but Emma's would always be the one that haunted her. Maria Rodriguez became an advocate for missing children, working with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She spoke at schools, community centers, and legislative hearings, telling Emma's story so her daughter's death might prevent other tragedies. She established the Emma Rodriguez Foundation, which funded search efforts for missing children and supported families navigating their worst nightmares. Sophia Martinez grew up with no memory of her testimony. Her parents decided she would learn the truth when she was older, when she could understand the magnitude of what she'd done. They saved every news article, every court transcript, every letter of thanks from strangers who called her brave. On Emma's birthday each year, the family releases pink balloons at the cemetery where she's buried. Sophia, now in 2nd grade, brings flowers and tells her cousin about school, about her friends, about the world Emma never got to experience. She doesn't remember the blue car. She doesn't remember the grass man. She doesn't remember testifying in the trial that captivated a nation. But somewhere in a box in her mother's closet is a drawing Sophia made when she was 3. A simple picture in crayon showing a blue car, a little girl with dark hair, and a rainbow overhead. 2 words changed everything: blue car. 2 words from the smallest witness brought down a monster. 2 words gave a grieving family justice. And 2 words reminded the world that sometimes the most powerful testimony comes from the most innocent voices, voices that speak truth simply because they don't yet know how to lie. Emma Rodriguez would be 11 years old now. She would be in middle school, probably still loving butterflies, probably still singing off-key with absolute confidence. Instead, she rests in Restland Cemetery under a pink marble headstone that reads, "Our angel, taken too soon, never forgotten." But she is remembered, not just as a victim, but as the catalyst for change that protected countless other children. And she is avenged. Marcus Webb sits in a maximum security prison, serving his life sentence in a 6x8 cell. He will never see another sunrise as a free man. He will never harm another child. All because a 3-year-old girl saw something, remembered it, and when asked about her missing cousin, said 2 words that shifted the case. Blue car. Justice delivered by the smallest voice. The end.